Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Before we begin today's lesson, I'd like to share with you a personal vignette. I think a personal vignette will help set the tone for the rest of this presentation, as well as offer a personal connection to the presenter, me. 7 years ago, I was walking around the Seoul subway system with a beautiful young Japanese woman. We were trying to go somewhere. I don't remember where. It might have been Dongdaemun, could have been somewhere else. But I recall explaining this to her. We're trying to go to Dongdaemun. And despite the fact that I knew this area better than she did, I'd lived there and she was just visiting. She's there for a few days. Despite the fact that my Korean skills were better than hers, she was quickly able to find Dongdaemun on the subway map. I was surprised and I asked her how she was able to do that because I knew she did not speak Korean. She explained that the kanji, the letters in the subway system, which are written in Japanese, Chinese, Korean, and English, explained to her where it was. She just recognized by understanding what the characters meant where Dongdaemun was. So there was not a literal translation. She just understood Dong means this word, De means this word, Moon means this word. I'm telling this story because this was a very mind blowing moment for my life. This was one of the most eye opening moments, instance in my entire life. It was a moment when I realized how much everyone around me can see in the world that I cannot. To make a comparison, I like to throw in some popular culture references. If you've ever seen the vampire movie Interview with the Vampire, there's this moment where Brad Pitt first becomes a vampire and he's looking at the world with vampire eyes and seeing things he had never seen before. As I stood there with my mouth open in the Seoul subway system, I looked around me and realized she's like a vampire. She can see so many things that I cannot see. It's like suddenly realizing that in your late 20s that you are illiterate, to realize that you spent your whole life illiterate and that everyone else can read and you cannot. So, armed with that, she went on her travels and continued on. I never saw her again. But I had some friends and coworkers. One of my coworkers was studying Chinese. He spoke several languages. I believe his first language was Korean. He spoke English with a British accent. You couldn't tell which language was his first language, but he's also working on other languages. He was using Anki, and he taught me to use Anki, the software which I've recommended in previous videos. Regularly, just on bus rides, going back to the city, or on the subway, looking at the subway stops, or just sitting down on the subway train, I'd be going through my Anki decks, just playing with the Anki software. I wasn't trying to learn Japanese at this time. I wasn't trying to learn Japanese letters. I was just trying to play with this software. In the course of several weeks in the summer in 2015, to my surprise, I would walk the subway and I'd see Gangnam. Gangnam. That looks like Gang. Gang looks like, what is it? That symbol is river. Nam, that looks like the symbol is south. Oh, Gangnam, South River. It's south of the River Han. Okay, I understand something now. I've learned something. I can read Japanese letters, which are Chinese letters. And by being able to read Chinese letters, suddenly now I can read I can understand what Korean means if I see the Chinese translation for it. Well, what's this other place? Yongsan. Yong means dragon. San means mountain. Dragon Mountain, Dragon Hill. Oh, like Dragon Hill Lodge. Okay, like the army base has. Okay, I got you. Okay. What's this Dong Dae Moon? Dong, that's the letter for east. De means great. Moon means gate. East Great Gate. I was able to do it now. And the thing was, I put forth almost no effort. I was just playing with this app on the subway or on a bus ride every few days or for a few minutes every day over the summer. Not a few minutes like an hour. I mean, a few minutes like a few minutes. Not every day, even just like every other day. On the weekends, I almost certainly did not play with it. I would just periodically go through this app and play with it. And suddenly I can read dozens of letters without having tried at all. And that made me notice. And with that point, I decided, okay, let me just pay more attention. Let me actively do this. Let me do this for maybe a half hour every day and make sure it's at least close to every other day, at least every weekday. In the course of the summer, suddenly, without trying very hard, with barely trying at all, and just looking at my environment, now I can read hundreds of letters. And so near the end of that summer, I decided to take a Korean class, and one of my classmates was a Japanese man. He also does not speak Korean, so he's studying Korean with me. I explained to him what I was working on with studying kanji, and he took a moment to write down the letters kanji. And I recognized the letter G, but what does kan mean? Kan means China, China letters, Chinese letters. And that same, at that instant, that same moment of oh that I had when I was a subway system with that beautiful Chinese girl, or sorry, beautiful Japanese girl, just flashed into my head. I suddenly had this feeling of understanding that I have a huge void, an oblivion in my mind that has only been recognized this moment because it's been filled. It's no longer a void. And that sensation is unlike any sensation I've had in life. I've never had moments where you just suddenly realize I did not know something before, and now I know something. So today's lesson is about kanji. And hopefully, you can have some of that feeling after watching this video. I'll try to make it as easy for you as I can, but understand this. I cannot read kanji well yet myself. This is learn with Alonzo. So you're learning with me. I'm learning it, and I'm trying to share what I'm learning with you. Let's get started. So I tell you this next part, you might switch off immediately. Don't switch off just yet. How many letters are there in Chinese alphabet? Is it 10,000? Is it 20,000? Might be 30,000. I think I heard most recently it was like 40,000 and they're new letters every day. You're still with me. Before you give up, understand this. I'm going to guess you might be an English speaker when you're watching this. And let me ask you this question. How many words are there in English? How big is that dictionary? And if you look in that dictionary, you probably have the dictionary because you do not know every word in the dictionary. You don't need most of those 40,000 words. In fact, you're considered literate if you can read 2,000 of those words. 2,000 is a pretty tall order. I understand that. Don't be intimidated just yet. This presentation is about how to learn how to read those 2,000 letters to make it much smaller pieces. It's not as daunting as it sounds if you understand how people who can read Chinese letters, kanji, how they learned how to read Chinese letters. But before I begin, this is the introduction. I'll talk about memory techniques, the radicals, learning, and then I'll conclude. But part of the introduction, I have to introduce one more story, but this one's shorter than the last one. Just before I was commissioned, one of our instructors, a major who I have a lot of respect for, was explaining to us we're on the way out. We're almost done with the program. We're going to be officers soon. When you're an officer, you do not have to do PT every day, typically. But by have to, I mean, or he meant you don't have to go to PT formation every morning. But you have to nonetheless develop a fitness ethos. That means you have to have a psychology of physical fitness. You have to understand that every day from now on, you have to be in shape and you have to maintain your shape. And you have to do whatever it takes to maintain your shape. And that's developing a fitness ethos. That means you have to look for new ways, creative ways, and actively try to find ways to exercise, if not daily, essentially daily. Like you miss Tuesday, but you're doing it twice on Wednesday. You have to have a fitness lifestyle. This is true not just for fitness. And as you get older, I haven't been in the military for a while, but I can say this. Last week, I ran up the mountain, the same hair mountain on this picture. I ran up the mountain 3 times. The week before that, I ran 5, up and down. That's the fitness ethos. You need to develop a learning ethos. Kanji should be part of that learning ethos. What I mean by learning ethos is you are learning every day. If you're not learning every day, you should be learning every day. And that doesn't stop. That's not, I like, there's something about gentlemen. We have a gentleman psychology of, I bought socks last year. Why do I have to buy socks again? Well, the socks deteriorate. It's not that everything deteriorates. It's not that your physical fitness deteriorates. It does. It's that you need to look at the world like you need to get stronger every day. You need to get smarter every day. And you need to learn every day. And that's part of the learning ethos. So you have to have a learning ethos. And part of the learning ethos can be made easier by learning to love it. And learning to love it comes from those sensations like I just described when you realize you just learned something. It's just kind of like when you're exercising, you discover a new muscle that sticks out that you didn't notice before, or someone else notices it. I recall being with 2 friends of mine who are Asian American, and we were watching the movie Rush Hour. I've never seen Rush Hour before. They liked Jackie Chan and Chris Tucker. I like Chris Tucker from Friday. We're watching together. And at one point, Jackie Chan does a stunt, and I see the Chinese letters for Red Dragon in the background. And I translated for my Asian American friends. It was one of these small moments where I was like, that was weird. I'm not sure that they didn't understand themselves, but it was just a weird moment to be able to read Chinese letters and translate for people actively while watching a movie. That will happen to you as you learn more letters. And you'll find, even in the United States, you don't have to be in East Asia, but even in the United States, you'll find going to a Chinese restaurant that being able to read just a few letters makes you feel like a different person. So I mentioned this mountain. I didn't put this mountain here just to inspire you. I want you to notice something. You can look at this picture and immediately tell that it's a mountain. It doesn't look like anything else. It looks quickly like a mountain. If you try to illustrate it, might not be simple, but you look at it and you see 2 peaks in the distance, 1 peak in the foreground. And immediately you look at this and say, yeah, those are mountains. It's not hard. Take a look at this. 1 peak in the foreground, 2 peaks in the background. If you can remember this pitchfork looking symbol and not think it's a pitchfork, if you can remember the picture I just showed you of the 3 peaks, congratulations, you just learned your first kanji. And you will see this one all the time in the United States. This is the kanji for mountain. We're going to talk about this in a little bit more, but let me comment on something. This one is easy if you accept that you can do it. it can get a little confusing with one more thing I have to tell you. It's almost like when you learn Latin prefixes and suffixes like pre, un, ill, re. The kanji might be the same meaning, but the word itself might change. Likewise, sometimes kanji have multiple meanings. You have to use the context to understand what it means. In this case, this word in Japanese could be yama or it could be san. So if you think of Mount Fuji, is that Fujiyama or is that Fuji-san? We might be able to talk about that a little bit more later in this presentation. So for memory considerations, I mentioned this before, I will mention it again, and this has been a best friend of mine for a long time. Anki software. Get it, download it, use it, and then download Kanji, the all-in-one Kanji deck. And if you do that, and you find yourself a moment every day when you're in the car, hopefully not driving, or at work or at lunch, or waiting at the post office, just going through a quick deck, 5 minutes, maybe 15 minutes a day while you're waiting, you will grow. If you want to grow a little bit faster, there's a way that you can help yourself. How many new letters can you learn in a day? Learning perfectly, don't count on learning that many in a given day, but as far as becoming familiar with them and working on them a little bit every day, get yourself a notebook, maybe 20 lines. That's 20 words you can learn, and just write the letters stroke by stroke on that page. Fill up the page with those letters and consider that part of your workout if you're working out sincerely. This picture is here for the same reason as the last one with the mountain, because the last thing you want to do is work on training your memory. I shouldn't say the last thing you want to do. One more thing you want to do is train your memory. And by train your memory, I mean you want to teach yourself to make every letter a story or a picture. I'm not going to recommend it again after this lesson, but there is that book by Joshua Foer, Moonwalk of Einstein. If you buy this book, this becomes a lot easier. But every letter in Chinese has some sort of connection with, or some sort of, I don't know how to describe it. Let me just get my notebook here. It has a category. There are pictographics where the letter is designed to be a picture or a representation of a picture. Indicative, which is used for abstract ideas. Compound, which is a mix of both. And phonetic, which is actually just the sound. Because remember, Japanese letters actually come from China. On that note, there are two types of reading: own reading, which is a Chinese pronunciation, and kun, which is a Japanese pronunciation. When you're writing these in your notebook, the stroke order is horizontal, which means like that, and then vertical like that. So you're going from the top left to the bottom right of the page and writing each stroke. So with that, we have this picture in the center of this page. Notice this. When I learned the letter that I'm going to show you next, I learned it by imagining this. This I-beam is being carried by a worker. This worker is going to put in work. He's going to be putting in the work of building a building with this I-beam. That's what this worker's work is. So sure enough, that I-beam, symbol for work. You feel me? Well, let's keep going. Here's where the meat of this lesson comes in. By the meat, I don't mean that this is the biggest part of the lesson. What I mean is this might well be the most important part of the lesson. With Chinese letters, with kanji, there's something called radicals. Radicals are the elements of Chinese letters. So remember I told you that there are 2,000 Chinese letters you need to know and maybe 20, 30, 40. When I check my notebook here, last thing I wrote down was 50,000 different letters. Well, how does that happen? There's a way that can happen and how it becomes readable. What you'll notice is that there are elements of a letter, and the different configurations of those elements gives you your Chinese letter. So this will be confusing as I phrase this. I'm going to use the word instead of element, I'm going to use letter. So each letter in the Chinese letter might have two letters in it. That's why I use the word element. It makes it a little bit easier. Those elements are called radicals. So let's imagine you have one grid for a Chinese letter. Each letter fills up one grid. You look at that grid and you'll see that it's got two shrunken letters inside of it to make one big letter, two shrunken radicals to make one big letter. The relationship between those two letters can change the meaning, can give you the meaning. Now, the radicals, not that many radicals. I think it's something around 120, maybe 200 radicals. Maybe 200, but something I think around 120. So, anyways, a doable number. So, if you can just learn the radicals and start recognizing the relationship between the radicals, that's when learning kanji becomes doable. So, understand this. You might see two kanji left to right. You might see two kanji top to bottom. You might see one kanji on the inside of the grid, another kanji on the outside. Inside, I mean inside and outside. I mean it's in the same grid, but you'll have another kanji inside of that, another radical inside of that radical, and that's how you end up with a lot of different types of options. Now, I've been saying so far examples where you might have only two radicals per letter, but you can have definitely more than that. Believe me, though, if you know the radicals, it doesn't seem intimidating anymore at all. So that's how it's not scary. So let's take a look at something. We're still using these pictures to try to build a story in our mind. So if we look here, you can tell me what this is. You've seen any movie from the Old West. I just taught you the symbol for door. Now, by door, this can also be gate. A lot of times people make a distinction between doors and gates when you're using your native language. I don't know the difference, but this saloon door swings open. You can see the panels just like you see here. Look like a saloon door swinging open. There you have door. It's that easy. You have one panel on each side, and that's a door. So let's move a little bit further because I want to show you a good example of how these radicals can combine. This symbol, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which I think is maybe 7 strokes. Let's look at this. So these squares that this woman has on her ear looks like earrings. Okay, I can kind of see, well, what are you getting at? I understand you're asking me what I'm getting at. Let's look at this. This symbol, this is how I made the connection. This and this. No, this is not the symbol for earring because I can see how you can go from here to here. Sometimes you don't get it exactly simply. I don't know how this means what it means, but I can make it mean it in my head. I can make a connection in my head. Here's how. This and this is not the symbol for earring. It's the symbol for ear. Okay, so bear with me because here's where it gets a little bit more complicated. I just helped you with a mnemonic to remember ear. And let's go to this one. Let's take a door. We open that door and we have a space. Then we have an ear in that space. When your ear is going through a space, you end up with what? Listening. How do I make that connection? I don't know, but try to think. If you work on this, the space that's filled with your ear is somehow listening. you can kind of do it. You can kind of find some way that that becomes a pattern. So we have a door. In the middle of that door is a space, and we have an ear. And this symbol right here, two radicals, forms the word, the kanji, for listening. Okay, so this relationship is how we can start to learn. So speaking of learning, making every kanji a story, using that mnemonic technique to try to make a story is how you can learn kanji. Now, the example I just gave you might not have been the best, but if you make bad examples that you remember easily, the goal is to remember. So don't worry about the bad example. Now, this one we'll talk about by looking at some previous examples, but this last thing, sorry, second last thing, our penultimate lesson with kanji is this one. Now, as you can see, there's one central flame, and next to it are two tongues. Well, here we have the symbol for fire. So let's look at that again. A central flame with two tongues of fire. And this is the symbol for fire. Now, when you speak this kanji, the word is ka. So I want to show you ka. Remember this. And let's go back to our friend, the mountain, the first letter you've learned in Japanese. So if we look at this mountain and we attach fire to it, ka yama, no, ka san. These two words together have a meaning, that relationship. So think about it. If you were to take a fire mountain, what could a kazan be? What's a fire mountain? Well, think about it. Hopefully you guessed right. Kazan means volcano. So if you see the symbol for fire next to the symbol for mountain, chances are you're talking about a volcano. Likewise, and this one's not as intuitive, but still quite good. If you see the kanji for fire with the kanji for flower, hana is the word for flower. Another word for fire can be bi. Hanabi is firework. That's how you learn. Try to find those relationships. It's easier to learn the words together than apart because there's context, and context builds memory. And speaking of building memory, kanji for famous places. I mentioned how I remember Dongdaemun, East Great Gate. Being in a place where they use Chinese letters definitely helps. And recognizing those places and what the places means definitely helps. Living in Seoul was a great thing for trying to learn to read Japanese letters somehow. Think about that. So finally, guys, we're wrapping it up. If you look at the top here, this symbol right here on the top, kan, the letter under it, G, Chinese letters. Hopefully your mind is as blown as mine was when I read that. So in conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, the plan for the future, I will try to be more consistent with the posting times. I don't know how easy it will be to do that at this time, but I'm aware of it as an issue. I'm learning how to do video editing as we speak, and hopefully I can get some music to throw in the background so this isn't quite as tedious as I'm sure it must be. As I'm wrapping up, I have to encourage you, please like, subscribe, and comment. As I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, this is not Alonzo Teaches. This is Learning with Alonzo. I'm saying that because while I want you to learn with me, and I understand that, I hope you understand that I will be making mistakes, this is not being said as a warning. This is being said as an invitation to people who know more than I do. If I make a mistake, by all means, please comment so that we can all learn together. This channel is about learning. So please comment so we can learn together. So as I wrap it up, I want to encourage you to do one thing. Remember what I said before. Try to develop a study ethos. And if there's a way you can do it, let kanji be part of that study ethos. Thank you very much.